I once had a teacher who said that when we're teaching the parable of the lost son to Christians, we should place most of the focus on the oldest son. I wouldn't say that the oldest son requires more focus, for each character speaks something to us, but he does deserve a unique focus. When the youngest son returns, the older son is hard at work in the fields, like a faithful son should be. As he comes close to the house, he hears the music and the dancing of the celebration, and he asks the servant what's happening. When he finds out that the celebration is for his youngest brother, he is furious, and out of that anger, he refuses to celebrate the return of his brother. Even when the father comes out and pleads with him to join, the older son refuses, claiming to the father that all these years I have been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. If we take away all of the religious analogies for just a moment and we picture ourselves in the place of the oldest son, I think that it is easy to understand where he's coming from. He has been faithful. He has been obedient. He has been slaving away in the fields all this time. He has done what he's supposed to do. He was living the model life while his younger brother went off and squandered their father's property on prostitutes. Fairness and justice would seem to dictate that the older brother be rewarded and the younger brother be punished. Instead, the youngest brother gets a party thrown in his honor? How unfair! I, I get it. I get the unease and anger and resentment of the older brother. But what the oldest brother doesn't realize is that he needs the unfairness of his father just as much as the youngest son does. Although the oldest brother has been in the presence of his father, he has not been living in alignment with the ways of his father. For if he had been, he would be rejoicing over the return of his brother. Instead, he disowns his brother just as his younger brother disowned their father. The oldest brother says to the father, "This son of yours." In his anger, he refuses to claim his brother as his own brother. He is so furious that he does all he can to keep the distance between them that the younger brother had created. The older brother is not looking for love or healing or restoration. He is only looking for himself. This parable was directed at the Pharisees and the teachers of the law who were complaining that Jesus welcomed sinners and ate with them. Jesus created this character of the older brother to represent them. Through the parable, Jesus is saying, "Don't you see how you have strayed from the ways of God? You might dwell and teach in the house of the Lord, but you do not dwell in or teach the ways of the Lord. You don't share God's heart or desires. Your only desires are for yourself." The father says to the oldest son, "You are always with me, and everything that I have is yours." He says that you have been doing my work, but you have not appreciated me. Everything that I have is yours, but you don't take advantage of it because you're too busy working to focus on a relationship with me. If you truly lived with me, you would understand why we have to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. The father reminds the older son that his brother is back. His own flesh and blood has returned. Maybe the youngest son deserves punishment, but let's show him love. Yes, he decided to distance himself, but let's invite him back in. He thought that we were better off to him dead than alive, and in that process, he made himself dead to us. His death and his departure were things to mourn about. But he has returned and is once again alive to us, so we celebrate. As Christians, we read this parable and get to ask ourselves if we relate to the oldest brother. Are we anything like the Pharisees and teachers of the law that are complaining about Jesus welcoming and eating with sinners? Do we take verses out of context to make excuses on why we don't have to be nice to sinners? Do we make people look and talk and act like us before we will accept them into our community? Do we gossip about the sins of others so that we can ignore the fact that we are no longer living in the righteous ways of God ourselves? Do we question deathbed confessions because we refuse to celebrate the return of one of our siblings? Do we value the salvational process and steps of our traditions over the joy and celebration of someone that was once dead, now being alive? Have we gotten caught up in the actions and forgotten to align our hearts and our attitudes with the righteous ways of God? Do we cling on to this view of an angry God ready to strike down anyone who is unrepentant? Have we forgotten the words of the Lord from Hosea? I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Or do we instead cling to the understanding of love that Christ laid down his life for us and we ought to lay down our lives for others? I know I just threw a lot of questions at you all at once. Don't worry about trying to think about all of them. If one or two of them popped out at you, then think about those. If none of them struck you, hopefully they got you thinking about situations in your own life. But all of those questions can be summed up into one big question. Will you stay outside in the fields with the oldest brother and Pharisees? Or will you come inside and join the celebration with your brother and your father?